yeah. Is it Saturday already? Have we made it through yet another week of Star Wars news? And wow, has it been a good week. We've been talking about Star Wars Starfighter and how we are now getting lightsaber duels in that movie, filmed by Tom Cruise. And if that's not good enough, Steven Spielberg was also on the set of the film with Sean Levy coming off the backs of Stranger Things Season 5. And we got some Mandalorian first look at the movie with a brand new image, a new synopsis for the film, and we're talking today about Ahsoka Season 2 leaks. And we even are getting a leadership change over at Lucasfilm, which most fans seem to be pretty excited about. It's been a crazy week for Star Wars news, and we got even more craziness to talk about today. So without further ado, let's dive into all of it. What's up, everybody? How's everybody doing on this fine Saturday afternoon? Oh, do we got a fun one today. We're talking about Ahsoka Season 2 leaks, and as you guys know, that always gets me really excited. But in terms of the Kathleen Kennedy stepping down as president of Lucasfilm, in terms of Dave Filoni taking the role of president, or I should say co-president, alongside Lin Brennan, that could be happening as soon as next week. As soon as 7 days from now, we could be having a new president or co-presidents of Lucasfilm. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but we also got to talk about these lightsaber duels in Starfighter. I know we talked about it a lot on Thursday's live stream, but today we're talking about it again. Because does this mean Sith versus Jedi, or are we seeing something completely different in the Star Wars timeline post-sequel trilogy? We'll talk about all of it, but before we do that, let's start the stream the only way we know how, by saying hi to everybody in the chat. Shall we? Let's do it. John, how we doing? Vegas Jedi in the house. Holly in the building. Matthew, what is up? Manning Films, what is up? Rachel, how we doing? Manda United in the building. Lobo, what is up? Nathan, how we doing? I Haja in the house. Greg, what is up? Mr. Slash X, how we doing? Darth Plagueis lives in the building. Steve, what is up? All right, if I missed you, you know the deal. Just yell at me in the chat. Let's give everybody a nice little
Hello there.
General Kenobi.
All right. Ron, what's up? How we doing? Okay. Let's start with the Ahsoka Season 2 leaks. I know it's going to take the majority of the live stream because Ahsoka Season 2 is just like, so exciting. But we got to talk about these Ahsoka Season 2 leaks because it has been brought to my attention, thankfully, thanks to the people who love Star Wars in the Discord. If you guys are not yet in that Discord, go join it immediately. There's a link in the description below. But thanks to the Discord, you guys have brought this to my attention because these giant robots or giant droids, which we've been talking about from the concept art shown to us almost a year ago now, because it was at Star Wars Celebration last year, those giant robots might have been the plan that Dave Filoni and George Lucas have been thinking about for the last 20 years. So we're talking about the idea that came from the Clone Wars all those many moons ago that could be coming back in Ahsoka Season 2 and really closing out what could be the story of Ahsoka. Because I think Ahsoka Season 2 might be the last time we see Ahsoka for a really long time. But that's just me. Let's talk about it. So, this was the image that was brought to my attention. This is concept art from the Clone Wars. Now, does this look familiar to anybody? First of all, giant robot, and this person is here for a scale, as it says right there, scale. Giant robot / maybe creature looking thing, but it looks quite familiar, especially in the face with the 4 eyes like that, when you put it side by side to the concept art images that we have for Ahsoka Season 2. This has got me so unbelievably hyped up because we're talking concept art images from decades ago, or at least a single decade ago, during the time of creating the first 6 seasons of the Clone Wars. You are looking at this I mean, it's the same thing. This is the same creature slash droid slash robot slash whatever this is going to be. 4 eyes, weird looking goatee kind of thing going on there. It's the exact same creature. This is concept art for Ahsoka Season 2, and this is concept art for the Clone Wars many, many moons ago. So, I scroll up here to show you. Well, this is the side profile. It does look like General Grievous right there for sure. But I don't know if that's going to be the same all these years later. But look to the right here. First of all, it's got this crazy spine-looking thing that doesn't really look like it's there in the concept art, at least. You can't really see his back, so that's kind of hard to tell. They got the same 3 or 4 fingered hands. As you can see, yeah, 4 fingered hands right there with really long fingers. That's the same. So that's very similar. The weirdest part to me is this. From the concept art for the Clone Wars, it's folded up. This says folded up. It's a droideka. That's what it looks like to me. It's a giant droideka. That's what it looks like. Because it looks like it folds up in a circle and maybe rolls around. Maybe not, because it has this giant spikes on its back, so it might not be able to roll around, but it at least folds up in a ball for some unknown reason. Now, when we put this into context, let me pull this up real quick. When we put this into context, what we are looking at here is pretty damn crazy. So, hang on, where is it? What the hell? Hang on, I gotta go to the Discord to find it. So, this is the post itself. This is where we are getting this from. So it's described to be a sentient Star Wars species. Sentient, meaning not a droid, I guess, to an extent. Sentient Star Wars species that is unidentified. Yes, unidentified. As of this tweet, day 1100. This large species first appeared in the Clone Wars cutscene. Canon, no, not yet at least. Creator Dave Filoni and others, the people who worked on the Clone Wars. I do believe this is intended to be a sentient being, at least based off of this art. So again, Clone Wars concept art, cut from the Clone Wars. Now, we don't know where this was cut from the Clone Wars, but I do have a few guesses. So I'm interested to see what you guys think. Where do you think this would have taken place in the Clone Wars if it had shown up? What do we think? Now, I have 2 explanations for this. I got 2. Mortis, yeah. So you immediately think Mortis. A giant being like this, the last time we saw something similar was on Mortis. These giant godlike creatures that were the father, the son, and the daughter. And even at one point in the Mortis arc, you see that the daughter and son turn into these massive dragon-like creatures. So on Mortis is really the only time we've ever seen something of this scale in the Clone Wars, at least from a sentient being, a living being. Obviously, giant, walkers and stuff were of this size, but this is a physical being. So Mortis is my first go-to. Now, this creature that I'm about to bring up is not from the Clone Wars, but does strike a very, at least scale-wise, resemblance to this creature, to this thing. And that is the Bendu. The Bendu from Star Wars Rebels. Now, you have to keep in mind that the creator of this drawing is Dave Filoni himself. I'll get to that super chat in 1 sec. It's Dave Filoni himself. So this was back during the time of the Clone Wars, and as we know, he uses so many concept art images from Ralph McQuarrie and old images that he even drew later on in his work. For example, you have all these concept art images of Zeb Orrelios in Star Wars Rebels. And Zeb, the Lasat, is just concept art for Chewbacca for the original trilogy. Or even Darth Vader's concept art images from the original trilogy are used to create Darth Vader in Star Wars Rebels. It happens over and over and over again. So it would make sense that Dave Filoni would take his own concept art of this massive sentient being that is way larger than any human and use it to create a being in Rebels. For example, the Bendu. Now, what's interesting to me about the Bendu is one, he doesn't die, he disappears. So in Rebels, he tells Thrawn, well, he has a lot of conversations with Kanan Jarrus, but he tells Thrawn how he is going to die, or how he's going to lose. Sorry, not die, but lose. And exactly what he describes of him being wrapped up, I forget what he specifically says, but wrapped up by like tentacles, or what happens to Thrawn in the end, in the final scene of Rebels, where he gets wrapped up by the Purgle and blasted into hyperspace. That's what the Bendu describes to him, how he's going to lose this fight. And then he just dips. The Bendu's like, see you guys, I'm good, just telling you your future, and now I'm going to go away forever. So my question to you is, one, do you think we will see the Bendu in Ahsoka Season 2? Yes or no? And two, do you think that this concept art image from the Clone Wars was part in the creation of the Bendu? Now, yes, the facial features look exactly like this, which we'll talk about, what this is, where this is, how this is, and why this is. We'll talk about that. But do you think this has anything to do with the creation of the Bendu? Yes or no? The Bendu won't be in Ahsoka Season 2? It would be a pretty big stretch. I don't know why we would see him, but I would want to. Bendu in live action? Yes, please. I would love it. I would absolutely love it. Hang on. While you guys answer that, let me check that super chat. Hang on 1 second. Where was it? Oh, Darth Plagueis lives with a very generous $5 hollow. That's extremely generous. I appreciate that quite a bit. Says, so what are the chances we get Mortis flashbacks in Ahsoka Season 2? And thank you for all you do. No, Darth Plagueis, thank you for your very generous super chat. What are the chances we get Mortis flashbacks? Well, I'm glad you asked. This concept art leak and the fact that it's connected to the Clone Wars specifically, and as many of you pointed out in the chat today, likely with the Mortis God arc, because a lot of stuff was cut from that. An appearance of Darth Revan and Darth Bane was supposed to be in that arc, and just a ton of crazy, crazy stuff, because George and Dave saw the opportunity where they're going to this place with living embodiments of the Force itself. They saw the opportunity to do some crazy stuff, so they drew up stuff like this. There's pretty much no doubt in my mind that this has something to do with the Mortis arc in the Clone Wars. So, will there be Mortis flashbacks? This makes it a lot more likely. When you have concept art from the Clone Wars looking so much like concept art from Ahsoka Season 2, the likelihood of Mortis flashbacks goes through the roof. Absolutely through the roof. And you have to remember that Ahsoka Season 1 successfully made it so that any normie fan who has never seen Rebels or the Clone Wars can watch Ahsoka, the first season, and understand what's happening. You don't have to know who Thrawn is, because they set him up perfectly. You know he's going to be the heir to the Empire. You know he's a big deal. You know all that. And then when they introduce him, they're going, Thrawn, Thrawn, Thrawn. And he has this whole army of stormtroopers. You know he's the real deal. You don't really have to know who Hera is. They introduce her as a general of the New Republic. That's all you got to know. That she has a child. That's all you have to know. Ezra, all you really have to know is that he's gone. He's disappeared. That Sabine's trying to find him. You don't have to have seen Rebels or Clone Wars before Ahsoka. They do that really, really well. Does it help? Does it make it a million times better? Yeah. But do you have to? No. Not at all. So, with Ahsoka Season 2, they are met with an even more difficult thing to accomplish. Mortis gods. How do you explain what a Mortis god is to a normie fan who's never seen the Clone Wars? How do you do it? It's going to be pretty damn difficult. How do you explain that 3 or 4 episode arc from the Clone Wars in one episode of Ahsoka? Because you can't take an entire hour or even more out of an 8-episode series to explain what these things are when they've already been explained in the past. How do you do it? Flashbacks, to me, seem to be one of the only answers. And flashbacks would allow us to get our rumors to come true. The rumors of Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor reprising their roles as young Obi-Wan and young Anakin from the Clone Wars era in their iconic Clone Wars outfits. Even getting Ariana Greenblatt to come back and play young Ahsoka. Yeah.
This is where the fun begins.
So with that, let me put up a poll. If you haven't smashed a frickin' like in the stream, get on it. All right, let's do this. Do you think we will get Mortis flashbacks in Ahsoka Season 2? Yes or no? And I appreciate the super chat, Darth Plagueis. It's led to a nice poll in the chat, so thanks to you. But do you think there'll be Mortis flashbacks in Ahsoka Season 2? Yes or no? Yes or no? What do we think? Now, here's the thing. Getting a Mortis flashback would be cool and all because it can give you that, like I just said, the young versions of those characters. Bring back Ewan, because why not? It would be cool. But what Ahsoka Season 1 accomplished, that Ahsoka Season 2 doesn't want to make the mistake of doing, is repeating itself. Star Wars has never been the thing that goes back and explains something that already happened to normie fans who won't understand it. Now, I know that kind of contradicts what I just said, but let me explain. We don't want a flashback to the Mortis gods that just re-explains something that already happened in the Clone Wars. For example, in Season 1, when we get those Clone Wars flashbacks, we go back to the Siege of Mandalore. We go back to the Battle of Teth. We go back to... What was the third flashback to? Whatever it was. We go back to those places, but it's not a retelling of the exact same story that we've already seen. It's a different telling because it's Ahsoka from present day going back in her memories and remembering what happened. And there, she's learned a lesson through Anakin, and we're seeing different scenes from those battles that we didn't get to see on screen in the Clone Wars. It's not a rehash of what we've already seen. It's a new addition to the story that's already been told. So if we are getting Mortis God flashbacks, it cannot be just a retelling of what we already know. It can't just be a recap of the 3-episode arc in the Clone Wars. They have to do it in a way that explains who the Mortis gods are by adding new context to that arc. They can't just be repeating themselves over again. And how do you do that? Well, you do that with some crazy things like Abeloth. You do that with some crazy explanations to giant sentient beings that were first seen in concept art for the Clone Wars. They are not here to describe to us who the father, son, and daughter are. We don't care. They're dead. It doesn't matter. All we need to know, all the normie fans need to know, is that Ahsoka is the living embodiment of the light side of the Force. The daughter's essence was transferred into her, and that could just be explained by a one-off line from Ahsoka to Sabine to explain Morai, this weird random owl that's just hanging out. That could be explained very easily. What needs to be explained for Ahsoka Season 2 is not the Mortis gods themselves, but Abeloth. If we are led to believe that this power that ends the cycle of good versus evil, as Baylan Skoll told us in Season 1, We are led to believe that that power is Abeloth. This incredibly powerful, godlike creature was once mortal, bathed in the fountain of fountain of knowledge and pool of power, or the reverse of that. You know what I'm saying? The character that was once mortal that got all this power and became far too powerful to be kept alive, or at least kept free, and the Mortis gods had to imprison her. That's the story that needs to be explained. That's not a story that we know. That's not a story that was told in the Clone Wars. That's a brand new story that needs to be explained in Ahsoka Season 2. So when we get flashbacks, when I'm talking about Mortis God flashbacks, I'm not talking about a retelling of what already happened, because that would just be a disgrace to people who spent their time watching the Clone Wars. I'm talking about a telling of a new story that explains who the hell these guys are and what the hell happened with Abeloth. Yeah. It's very important that Abeloth specifically is introduced correctly. You're talking about a villain who could be the villain in Star Wars for the next, I don't know, 50 years? Think about it. That sounds crazy, but Abeloth could be our villain in 2070. I know the words that I just said didn't sound like English and didn't sound like they could possibly be true, but Palpatine, somehow Palpatine returned, Palpatine has been our main villain in the Star Wars timeline for the last 48 years. Coming up on 49 years. He has been the villain since day one, and he still is until at least the Rise of Skywalker. And he still is now. He's still the main villain of the Bad Batch. He's still the main villain looming on Exegol in the Mandoverse. He has been the main villain for 48 years. So it's possible that the next villain we get introduced to, and it could be Abeloth, is the next villain for the next 50 years. Granted, probably not, but it's a possibility. So the introduction to that character, the explanation for how important she is, has to be done correctly. Because she is, at least in Legends, by far one of the most powerful beings ever created. And if she is an ancient being, if she's been imprisoned by the Mortis gods for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, and then she remains in prison, thanks to Anakin and Ahsoka, for the next, who knows, 40 plus years, until Ahsoka dies, because she is a mortal being. Maybe. Is Ahsoka mortal? Now that she's got, the blood of the daughter of the Force coursing through her veins, is she mortal? Or is Ahsoka just gonna live forever? That's like a genuine question I got for you guys. Is she mortal? Ahsoka is mortal, yes. How? Is she not supposed to be the daughter now? Is she not supposed to be the living embodiment of the light side of the Force? Wouldn't that make her immortal like all the gods were? Ahsoka lives as long as Dave Filoni works at Lucasfilm. Okay, I don't mean from I don't mean from a writing perspective of Dave Filoni, because of course, yes, Dave's favorite character is Ahsoka, but I'm more so talking, will she die of old age? Let's put it that way. Will she die of old age? Because yes, she can get killed by a lightsaber or by, I guess, anything, but will she die of old age? In The Rise of Skywalker, Rey hears Ahsoka's voice alongside of others, so she definitely died by that point. that doesn't necessarily mean that she died at that point. She could have just called out through the Force from Peridia. Still alive, still kicking it. That doesn't mean that she's dead. You know? Avengers Doomsday is going to blow all these new Star Wars projects out of the water. Magneto versus Doctor Doom. See, I am a Star Wars fan, you know? I'm also a Marvel fan, but I'm a way bigger Star Wars fan. And I still agree with your statement. I'm not going to sit here and try to compare The Mandalorian and Grogu to the last 30 years of Marvel movie telling being brought into one movie. From the old X-Men to the old Fantastic Four to the new Fantastic Four to the new Avengers to the old Avengers, bringing all into one movie. I'm not crazy. I understand that Avengers Doomsday is an Avengers movie and bringing together the last 30 years of Marvel storytelling. And The Mandalorian and Grogu, as big as they are, as big as Grogu is, I mean, look down, he's on your shirt right now. They've only been around for the last 6 years. So it's not really, you know, can't be compared very easily. Yeah. I still think Star Wars will have a better year than Marvel, though. I do. Because the Avengers movie, as big as it is not until December. Yes, they have Spider-Man 2, but that's it. They got some shows, but that's it. Star Wars, in terms of the entire year, I think will win. Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. Because if not, I mean, we'll all just be...
Execute Order 66.
But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Okay, back on track here. Back to our sentient being concept art. So not only is it really cool that they fold up like droidicas, but the fact that these are going to be in Ahsoka Season 2. Now let's talk about what these beings might actually be. What do we think this is? And I'm not saying like, how do I phrase this? I'm not saying, is it a droid? Is it not a droid? I'm saying, is it a living being, first and foremost? And if it isn't, who put it there? And what is its purpose of being there? Because yes, we have this image from the concept art, which is really, really cool. But there is also this image where there are at least 4, as you can see, 4 swords. 1, 2, 3, 4. At least 4 of these guys that are all a lot smaller than our previous man. This guy is enormous, and these guys are a lot smaller. So not only is there just one giant robot, but there is at least 5, and then there's one that flies. They fly now. So we're not just talking about 1. We're talking about at least 6, unless this is the same as the other one, but the other one didn't have wings. So at least 6. Unless he's like a transformer of some kind, which would be absolutely insane. But what do we think? What are these things? What is their purpose, and why are they there on Peridia? Because let's be honest, we have gotten insane amount of leaks about Ahsoka. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about how this whole battle for Dathomir in this second season with Hera, Chopper, Ezra, all on Dathomir fighting Night Sisters and Stormtroopers and Grand Admiral Thrawn himself. It's going to be an incredible war in our Star Wars in the main galaxy. But on Peridia, the leaks have been concept art. The leaks have been about Baylan Skoll, not Shin Hati, and never once in a single leak or concept art image for Ahsoka Season 2 have we seen Abeloth. Never. So the only idea of Abeloth's existence in the first place is us fans, myself very much included, pumping the idea that Abeloth will be in Season 2. There has been nothing from Lucasfilm to confirm that. None of the concept art confirms that. It's just purely off the backs of what we saw in Season 1. Baylan Skoll's description of this power that he seeks, and the Mortis God statues. That's it. So I guess my question for you, Chet, is it possible that Abeloth is not in this show at all? That would kind of be difficult, because then what would the power be that Baylan Skoll is speaking of? What would the person or being that's calling out to Baylan be? Because he hears somebody calling him. So who would that be? These droids? These sentient giant monster creature things? Could it be this guy? It seems as though fans have been, at least myself, 100% on board the Abeloth theory for Ahsoka Season 2. And granted, just the fact that she's not in any concept art and she's not been confirmed by Lucasfilm doesn't mean she's not in Season 2. I mean, she could definitely still be in Season 2. And they could just be keeping it a secret, because as we know, Lucasfilm is really, really good at keeping secrets. Really good. But this giant temple-looking thing, the glimmer of light on top of the snowy mountaintop that we've been talking about for months and months and months, or actually years since Ahsoka Season 1 ended. What is calling out to Baylan Skoll? Do you guys think it's Abeloth? It's 100% possible that there's no Abeloth at all. Then what is it? Let's play the devil's advocate for a second. If this Abeloth thing is not real, if we're not getting Abeloth based off of somebody calling out to Baylan Skoll, based off of the fact that the only person from Legends that we know of that could end this cycle of good versus evil that's connected to the Mortis gods, the fact that there's Mortis god statues there, the fact that this was once a Night Sister kingdom and now it's a wasteland and all the Night Sisters are dead and only one person, again from Legends, that could do this is Abeloth. All lines point to Abeloth, but let's take that out of the equation for a second. If it wasn't her, who could it be? Who would be calling to Baylan Skoll? Zepho? Interesting. Now, my problem with the Zepho, well, I got a bunch of them. My problem with the Zepho is, first of all, their only appearance, or I guess lack thereof, is in Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. Because they're not in those games, because they're an ancient civilization that's gone, but their, I guess, statues and artifacts are still there. And in all of those statues and artifacts, there is no connections to the Mortis gods. None. There's no statues to the Mortis gods. There's no teases towards the fact that they're worshiping these gods. Nothing. So that wouldn't really explain the 3 Mortis god statues that were built on Peridia. Also, my problem is they haven't appeared in anything else. So if you are going to introduce the Zepho as this major threat in Ahsoka Season 2, well, then the only place that fans would know them from is the Jedi games. And granted, the Jedi games do sell extraordinarily well. Cal Kestis is a fan favorite character, but not just normie fans, but a majority of the Star Wars fandom would not know who the Zepho even are, because not everybody plays video games. Now, granted, I guess you could make the same argument about Abeloth. Most people don't even know who she is, but she has the connection to the Mortis gods, and the Mortis gods are known by everybody who's watched the Clone Wars, which is more of a majority of the fandom. Yeah. Andrew says a kyber crystal could be calling out to Balin, calling him back into the light. Well, I don't know if it would be calling him back into the light, but a kyber crystal wouldn't be guaranteeing Balin the end to this constant struggle between good versus evil. That description means that whatever Balin seeks is more powerful than Vader, more powerful than Palpatine, more powerful than anything that has come before in this never-ending cycle of good versus evil. And the only thing I can think of is Abeloth. Even Greg says, yeah, I've never heard of the Zepho and I didn't play the video games. There you go. Mortis God statues at the end of the season along with Morai. It's the biggest tell as to where we are going. I agree. So I do think, and let's round it off here, I do think that we are going back to Abeloth. That's all where it goes. So here's how this goes. If this is Abeloth, if this is indeed Abeloth, Star Wars Nerd with a very generous $2 haul didn't say anything. What the hell? You just send me your money and don't say anything? God! I appreciate it, though. So going back to Abeloth. This is something new. Now, when I say this, I mean these giant sentient creature-looking things. This is something new. Now, granted, whenever Dave or anybody brings a Legends aspect into canon, for example, Grand Admiral Thrawn, there's changes. There's changes whether it's to fit canon or to just make it cooler. But Thrawn specifically goes from being just the heir to the Empire in Legends to this very, well, I guess he was complex in Legends, but he's got this whole backstory now of his people, of the Chiss ascendancy, of the fact that he's trying to protect his people from the Grisk. All of that is not there in Legends. So you have that added bonus. Now, what if, because in Legends this doesn't exist, what if the prison that the Mortis gods set Abeloth up in, they know that at some point, whether it be in 1,000 years or 10,000 years, they will die. And if they die, they don't want the entire galaxy to be absolutely destroyed by Abeloth just because they died. So they have to create these sentient beings, droid-looking giant creatures, and some of them even fly now. These giant beings to protect the entire galaxy from Abeloth. And what looks to be happening here, as Sabine Wren is literally shooting one of them, and Ahsoka has her lightsaber out with another one, and the two of them are back to back with their lightsabers about to slice and dice these guys, it looks like maybe by accident or on purpose, Ahsoka, Sabine, and Baylan Skoll, and maybe even Shin Hati will be the ones who accidentally or on purpose, in terms of Baylan's perspective, I guess, accidentally or on purpose, free Abeloth. They might be the ones who destroy the guards, which allows Abeloth to be freed. Honestly, this is something that Ahsoka's character doesn't really have. And Ahsoka's been through a ton. We've seen her character develop from the age of like 13 or 14, however old she is in the Clone Wars, all the way to this, I don't know, how old would she be? 30s, 40s? Probably in her 40s now, right? I guess into her middle age of Ahsoka. We've been with this character all throughout her life and seen her go through so many things. A mistake of freeing the most evil being ever into, or I guess out of her prison, would be a huge mistake and something that would allow you to tell an incredible story for season 2. Because what if this is like the first couple episodes? What if we kickstart right away with Ahsoka and Sabine on the tail of Baylan Skoll, just tracking him down, and they come across this glimmer of light on the top of the snowy mountaintop. They come across this prison, and they accidentally free Abeloth. So in one galaxy, you have the entire plot being this war in our Star Wars, Thrawn versus the New Republic. And in the other galaxy, it's how the hell do we recapture Abeloth and put her in this prison? And probably by the end of the series, it's going to have to be Ahsoka who stays there forever as the guardian of this temple or of this prison. And maybe even Anakin has to help out too. In the way you can describe the Mortis gods, the way you can explain not just the Mortis gods themselves, but Abeloth too, would be with flashbacks, with maybe Anakin's Force Ghost himself telling Ahsoka and Sabine who this person is, where she comes from, why she's such a bad guy, and what the threat is. But it may be too late at that point. It might just be too late. Okay, but let me get to the super chat. Well, you guys tell me about that. All right. Jesus. My chat is flying. Okay. The Typhoonian, with a very generous $5 holla, I appreciate that quite a bit, says it's implied that this is the same call that Palpatine had in the Aftermath trilogy. Okay, kind of. Whatever it is, it didn't call out to Vader, the Chosen One, for reasons. Well, yeah, you make a good point. Well, what the hell's happening? Oh, somebody gifted memberships. Holy crap. We'll get to that in one sec. I appreciate it. Let me get to this super chat first. It implies that this is the same call that Palpatine had after the Aftermath trilogy. Yes and no. At least, why did it not call out to Vader? I think it's because Palpatine was still alive. Maybe Palpatine knew about this. Like, knew about this other galaxy. Knew about the Mortis. I mean, knew about, yes, the Mortis gods, but knew about Abeloth. It's possible that Palpatine had some knowledge of this. And he was stopping that from stopping this call, I suppose, from getting to anybody in the galaxy until he died. There's two things that I think had to happen before Baylan Skoll could hear this message. The Mortis gods themselves had to die, which happens in the Clone Wars. And then Palpatine himself had to die too. Because something is calling out to Baylan, but it's not like he heard that call beforehand. You know? It's almost a coincidence that Ezra and Thrawn go there. But hey, I don't believe in coincidences. Now, it might have been the Force itself that sent these Purgles to that location. Well, I guess that's where they go to die, but you know what I mean. Because Thrawn being there is what eventually ends up with Morgan Elsbeth and Baylan Skoll teaming up and bringing Thrawn back. But Baylan Skoll does that for his own reasons, which is because he's hearing this voice call out to him that tells him to go to Peridia and save him or rescue this person or whatever it is. So it's all very coincidental. We'll put it that way. But why do I think it didn't call out to Vader / the Chosen One? Maybe Palpatine stopped it. I don't know. I really don't. But you bring up a great point that does need to be explained in the show. Why is Baylan Skoll the one who got called to? Why did nobody else ever get called to? Was it because the Mortis gods were still alive? Or was it because Palpatine was still alive and he was stopping it? All that. We shall see. Brett says, do I think that Steven Spielberg could direct a Star Wars movie? Maybe set in the New Republic? Do I think he could direct a Star Wars movie? Yes. Do I think he will? Probably not. I would be shocked if he did. I'll put it that way. Okay. Greg with the very generous 5 gifted memberships. That's insanely generous. I appreciate that quite a bit. Let's see who got them. Nico or Nicho? Zima. Pokey Thoughts. Krav. Yep. And Zia, I guess. Welcome to the people who love Star Wars. Welcome to the people who love Star Wars. I appreciate that so much, Greg. That's insanely generous. I really, really do. Gifted memberships are, very, very nice and, all that great stuff. Okay. But the Bendu be collecting space whales' souls? What the hell? That's a little crazy. In the regular galaxy, the source is a well of is the wellspring of life force planet. So I'm guessing that the source is similar to that. So you're talking about like when Yoda's getting called to in Clone Wars Season 6? Interesting. That is actually fascinating. I never drew that connection. The parallels between Baylan Skoll being called out to by whatever this creature or person is, or Abeloth is, on Peridia, is very similar to Yoda in the Clone Wars Season 6 being told or called out to by Qui-Gon, and I guess the wills of the Force, to go to first Moraban or Korriban, and then to, that place, I suppose. Andrew says, Baylan separated from Shin on purpose. Could it be that he has studied ancient Jedi texts and Sith archives? He has previous knowledge of Peridia? It could be the sun calling to him. I don't think so. The sun is dead, so I don't think so. But why would he separate from Shin on purpose? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? I think, honestly, Baylan was trying to protect Shin by sending her back with Thrawn. Now, Shin didn't do that, but that's what I think he was trying to do. And maybe, we don't even know, maybe the person who's calling out to him said, come alone. We have no idea. What I think's happening here, and this is just my speculation, I think Abeloth is calling to Baylan to use Baylan as her vessel. I've been watching way too much Stranger Things. To use Baylan as her vessel as a living body. Because right now, Abeloth doesn't have one. That's what I think's happening. She needs a physical body to live inside, and Baylan is supposed to be that. Now, do I think Baylan will eventually be that? No. I still think it's going to be Shin Hati, hence the white hair, the creepy no blinking eyes, and just the look of Shin is very Abeloth-esque. And that's why I think she stayed on Peridia to complete that arc, to give her the body that Abeloth needs. Yeah. So there's that. Somehow the sun has returned. I don't think so. Yeah, he sent her back to protect her because he doesn't really know what this threat is going to be. He doesn't know how powerful this thing is or if it could just kill her in 2 seconds. So he is trying to protect Shin by sending her back with Thrawn because Thrawn right now is the best bet. He's the heir to the Empire. Yeah. Abeloth might use Baylan as a conduit to drain the Force out of all Force-sensitive people. The problem with that is Abeloth can't do something of that level before the sequel trilogy. Could she do it after? Maybe. But she definitely can't do it before because that would have to be mentioned at least once in the sequels. Oh, yeah, you remember that day when, all our Force abilities got drained from us? Yeah, might want to tell Rey about that one. Like, some things can't happen before the sequels because they would have to have been mentioned. Have to. And that's one of them. That's why I think Abeloth's not going to win or get freed until after the fact, until after the sequels. So I think Ahsoka Season 2 is going to pretty much be putting a Band-Aid on the whole situation by putting Ahsoka in the place of these giant sentient guards. Because that's what I think these are. They're just prison guards. And I think Ahsoka and maybe even Force Ghost Anakin are going to be the new guards. And it's pretty much just a Band-Aid on the situation until Ahsoka eventually maybe dies, unless she's immortal. But when she dies, post-sequels, and now the next generation has to deal with that. Because here's the thing. There's only a few options for what the post-sequel world villains can be. At least there's only a few options if you want them to be on the same level as Palpatine and Vader and all the villains we've seen from the Skywalker saga. You need a great villain to kickstart your post-sequel world. Now, we do have some information about that today because we can switch gears a little bit here. We talked about on Thursday's live stream, there's going to be lightsaber duels in Star Wars Starfighter. Star Wars Starfighter is our first project post-sequels. So who's going to be the main villain of the post-sequel world? Well, it could be somebody wielding a lightsaber, which indicates Sith Lord, right after Palpatine just died and claimed he was all the Sith. But I guess that wasn't true. And I suppose Rey claimed to be all the Jedi, which isn't true either, if characters like Cal Kestis, Ezra Bridger, Ahsoka, and others are still alive. But yes, Tom Cruise. Take away the fact Tom Cruise being on set is cool. It's one thing. Tom Cruise on the set of Starfighter, really cool. I'm sure he'll have a cameo in the movie at some point. But people are glossing over the fact that he filmed a lightsaber duel in a muddy pond. The muddy pond thing is one thing. It makes you think of places like Dagobah, which would be absolutely insane. Some people even thought of Ossus, which is Luke Skywalker's Jedi Temple, and it could be the day that Kylo Ren kills all the Jedi at the temple, and maybe we're talking about Mara Jade and how she could be played by Amy Adams, and this is her son, and it could be Luke Skywalker's son, and it's all just,
This is where the fun begins.
But people are glossing over the fact of lightsaber duels in Starfighter. Because before Thursday, nobody was thinking there was going to be lightsaber duels in a movie titled Starfighter, starring Ryan Gosling as a Starfighter pilot. Because it's called Starfighter. Now the fact that there are lightsabers everywhere leads you to think that the villains, i.e. Matt Smith and Mia Goth, who are playing the villains of the movie, should be wielding lightsabers, which makes them one of very few options. Sith Lords, and could even be, like we talked about on Thursday, an older version of a Darth Talon. Maybe going down the route of Darth Krayt and Darth Talon, which would be so badass. In terms of wielding lightsabers, there's not many other options. Unless it's a brand new Sith Lord, which would be okay too. But for other main villains, Abeloth is the big one because they're setting it up with Ahsoka. And the other one would be the Grisk. Sort of the canon version of the Yuuzhan Vong. The Grisk were established in the Thrawn books. They're this huge threat to the Chiss Ascendancy. They're from the unknown regions. And Thrawn could likely be the one who warned the galaxy about them. So in the Mandoverse, when Thrawn comes in as the heir to the Empire, he could warn the rest of the people that there's this bigger threat in the unknown regions. The Grisk. Everybody could laugh him off, just like they did when he told Palpatine, just like they did when he told Vader about the Grisk, and they literally fought the Grisk in those books. But it could be that the Grisk are being set up in the main Skywalker saga to be the villain in a post-sequel world. They don't wield lightsabers, per se. But it could be. How do you one-up Palpatine, the strategical genius that made a war where he's the leader of both sides, the Clone Wars? He's the leader of the Separatists, he's the leader of the Republic. And then then he becomes the emperor of the entire galaxy for over 25 years, or 20 years. Then he dies, comes back to life, and takes over the galaxy again. How do you one-up that guy? There's only a few options. Abeloth or an entire species like the Grisk or the Vong that are so powerful that they could take over the galaxy themselves. But that's a entire species versus one guy. It's crazy. So Palpatine is a very, 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 very underrated villain because Vader gets all the credit, or Darth Maul's really cool looking, or Kylo Ren has a nice lightsaber and a cool mask. But Palpatine is always the one pulling the strings. He's one of the greatest villains in cinema ever. To one-up that is very difficult to accomplish. So whatever the villain of this Starfighter movie is, possibly wielding a lightsaber, that's going to be very, very important. Could be our first villain post-sequels, post-Skywalker saga, post-Palpatine himself. Yeah. So, then again, Mike, the sequel trilogy was so sparse, and it depicts the events of history and lore. Who's to say that over the year, Abeloth was never mentioned? So maybe Tom Cruise is a cameo? Well, Abeloth is not mentioned in the movies, at least. That's for sure. But the characters who are going face-to-face with Abeloth, for example, Ahsoka, Sabine, Huyang, Baylan Skoll, and Shin Hati, those 5 characters specifically, and the people that they would come home and tell, Hera, Ezra, Zeb, Chopper, all these characters I just listed off, none of them make an appearance in the sequel trilogy. Not a single one. So the same way that at the same time of the original trilogy, where we're getting this incredible story of Luke, Leia, Han versus the Empire taking down Vader and Palpatine, there are other things happening in the galaxy. The entire Rebels crew, the entire Ahsoka and Mando and Grogu, all these characters, Cal Kestis, they are doing something. They're not helping our main characters, but they're doing something during the events of the original trilogy. So the same way that can happen, these characters, yet again, Grogu, Ahsoka, the entire Ghost crew, Cal Kestis, all these characters could be doing something just as important as the main characters are in the sequel trilogy during the events of the sequel trilogy. What that is, we have no idea yet. But that could be a big deal. Because if it is Abeloth related, if they're all trying to protect the galaxy from Abeloth, or if they're in the unknown regions fighting the Grisk, that'd be pretty damn important. It's like Ahsoka. Where was Ahsoka when Revenge of the Sith happened? What was she doing when Anakin and Anakin was falling to the dark side, when they had to go save the Chancellor? What was she doing that was so damn important? You know what it was? She was fighting Darth Maul in the Siege of Mandalore, which, by the way, no Mandalorians in Revenge of the Sith either. No Mandalorians in, I guess, Boba Fett, but no Mandalorians in the original trilogy. No Mandalorians in the sequel trilogy, other than Boba Fett. So there is ways to go around it, that these characters are having more, not more important stories, but important stories nonetheless, being told at the same time. Yeah. But the original trilogy characters didn't take down anybody. They failed because you have the First Order and Empire return. True. I mean, no, there was no question mark to that. True. That's absolutely true. However, they did win for a little while. Now, my thing with this, the whole Palpatine return thing, is it good? Is it not good? Palpatine's return is not my problem. Palpatine is such a genius that you would have to have assumed, and you don't have to assume anymore, that he had a contingency plan to return. If anybody was to kill him, he would have a way to still live. That was all the Bad Batch was about. Project Necromancer, The Mandalorian, all this stuff with Exegol in the comics. Palpatine is too much of a strategical genius to not have a contingency plan for if he in fact dies. Whether it's Vader who kills him, whether it's Luke who kills him, whoever kills him, he should have a plan. And he did. And that's not the problem that I have. technically they won. There's at least a few years of somewhat peace. There's never really peace in a galaxy where there's trillions and trillions of beings. There's always fighting going on at some form across the galaxy. But my issue with somehow Palpatine return was the execution of it all, not the fact that he did return, because he returns in Legends, and nobody really had a problem with that. And a guy that smart, so fixated on the ability to live forever, you'd think that he would have something in store. And he does. So that's not my issue with it. I guess what you're more so pointing to the fact is that Luke, Leia, and Han didn't win. Well, they did win their fight. They destroyed 2 Death Stars. They stopped the Empire. They built the New Republic up. Luke Skywalker builds a new Jedi Order up. It's not until 25 years later when they fail again. When the New Republic outcasts Leia. When Leia and Han break up because their son falls to the dark side because Luke failed his nephew. So they won, but then they fail later down the line. Yeah. What? Cloned consciousness? Yeah. Anakin said, bring balance to the Force like I did. Yeah, Anakin brought balance, at least for a short period of time. And then Rey has to do it again. I think we're going to get a lot of filler info this year, answering a bunch of questions. Ahsoka Season 2 will answer a ton of questions. Because Ahsoka Season 1 was pretty much the cliffhanger that left us with all these unanswered questions. The Mortis Gods, what's calling out to Bale and Skull, what the hell is this thing? Well, I guess we didn't see that in Season 1, but Thrawn returning to the main galaxy, how is that going to work with him as the heir to the Empire? All those questions need to be answered. We got 1,000,001 questions about what the plot of The Mandalorian and Grogu is going to be, but I agree with you. Like, Maul Shadowlord can give us an insane amount of answers as to what's going on with his character, this new Twi'lek character, the underworld of Star Wars, maybe even give us more Asajj Ventress to explain what happens to her and her apprentice after the events of Tales of the Underworld, and maybe even give us some bounty hunters like Boba Fett or Cad Bane. 2026 could be the year of answers, for sure. Yeah. Ahsoka Season 2 better explain what the World Between Worlds is. I actually disagree. I think the World Between Worlds has an explanation enough to where it doesn't need to be answered. Max Rebo brings up a great point, because Star Wars has never left an unanswered question unanswered. Star Wars has been very particular about what it does and doesn't answer. For example, Yoda's species. If I go the rest of my life never knowing Yoda's species or what planet he comes from, that'll be a good life. I will appreciate it, because not everything needs to be answered. However, the World Between Worlds is something that we already pretty much have a pretty good grasp on. If you just watch Ahsoka Season 1 and Rebels, which is the only 2 times we go into the World Between Worlds, and you listen to how people describe it, specifically in Rebels, it's a conduit between the living and the dead. It's not a time travel device. It's not a place where you can go back in time and alter the events of the past. It's something that always is and remains to be. For example, as I mentioned before, Ahsoka never dies versus Vader on Malachor 5. That's not an event that Ezra goes back and changes. It's not going back and rewriting the history of the Star Wars timeline. Always and forever will Ezra go into the World Between Worlds and save Ahsoka Tano. That is something that is fixed to the canon timeline, that will never be altered and can never be changed. The same way that Ahsoka being pulled out by Anakin in Ahsoka Season 1 can never be altered and can never be changed. There is no universe or multiverse in Star Wars. There's no multiverse where Ahsoka dies in either of those events. There isn't. That's not how Star Wars works. So the World Between Worlds is not that place. To Ezra, it's described as a place for him to get answers. And granted, I guess it gives him some answers and closure to his master's death, so to speak. But all that to say, and now granted, the answers of him saving Ahsoka and now Ahsoka being the one who comes and rescues him in the end back there, you need a little bit of unanswered questions there. Because the world between worlds as a concept is explained pretty well. Why it exists and how it exists, that's not explained. And I don't think it needs to be. Just like the Force itself isn't really all that explained. Force ghosts are the perfect example. I think Force ghosts need more of an explanation because they are a concept that is something that only few can accomplish. I think anybody could enter the world between worlds if they have the Force and are and have access to the portal entrance, like Ezra did on Lothal. Any Force user could have gone to Lothal and opened that portal. Force ghosts is something that can be trained to accomplish and has not been fully explained. It's a meeting place. Kind of. I go back to, again, the conduit between the living and the dead. A living person and a dead person can have a physical conversation. Sure. Yes. Like Anakin and Ahsoka. Midichlorians. Midichlorians will never be explained. It's the Force. It lives in all of us. It flows through everything. With training, you can utilize it. Some more than others, depending on the midichlorian count that you have. The natural gifted talent that you have. Cassian's sister, a little bit unanswered. The whole Cassian's sister thing is more so that at a young age he lost his sister. It's not that she's probably out there somewhere alive. It's probably the contrary. She's probably dead. But it's more so that what he lost at a very young age, what he had to fight for since the age of 10 or 9 or however old he was. Yeah. Will Din Djarin and Grogu be in Ahsoka Season 2? If they are, it would only be at the end to set up whatever comes next. I don't see them being very prevalent in the story. But there is the connection to Zeb Orrelios, because Zeb will be in The Mandalorian and Grogu, so only time will tell. Only time will tell. Yeah. For the best explanation of the world between worlds, I recommend looking up the cosmic force. It functions similar to how the Force, similar in allowing Force users to access in it and view everything in the Force in the past, present, and future. Well, the cosmic force you're describing, like that not wasteland, sorry, that land afterlife almost. The land that we actually saw recently in the Legacy of Vader comics. Is that what you're talking about? Because that is similar, but it is also a different place. Yeah. What if the Gris could open the mind of the person to become a Force user so that their entire race became evil, and they mastered the evil and became masters of evil and projected their Force specter to stop growth? You broke my brain on that one. I'm going to be honest. That one completely broke my brain. Tom Cruise is playing Jackson. Awesome. Oh, my God.
I got a bad feeling about this.
We're losing it, chat. All right, let's regroup here. Let's regroup for a second, okay? Let's calm down. Calm down. And regroup. Since you brought it up, let's talk about a little bit of Starfighter. So one of the biggest news pieces of the week, and we will circle this back to Ahsoka Season 2, don't you worry. The biggest news pieces of the week was this. Tom Cruise visited the set of Star Wars Starfighter and ended up filming a lightsaber duel, and part of it was shot by Tom Cruise. How cool is that? So we talked about this on Thursday, but now we have to talk about who is wielding the lightsabers, and not just who, but why. Like, is Ryan Gosling playing a Jedi here? Or a Force user of some sort? Are the villains of this movie Sith Lords? These are the questions we need answering. So tell me in the chat as I read this. Sean Levy revealed to the New York Times that Tom Cruise visited the set of Star Wars Starfighter in November and ended up filming one of the movie's lightsaber duels, which before Thursday we had no idea even existed. Lightsaber duels in Starfighter. We hadn't a clue. Levy is directing the Ryan Gosling-led Star Wars tentpole, which is due in theaters on May 2027. As recounts by The Times, Tom Cruise was up to his ankles in mud and pond water. Again, we could speculate till the cows come home about what planet that could be. Could be Dagobah, could be Ossus, could be a brand new planet for all we know. He wore the look with great concentration as he stooped over a digital camera, trying to frame the perfect shot. Sean Levy glances around in slight disbelief. Last week, Steven Spielberg was here, Sean Levy told the publication, and now Tom Cruise is wielding a camera, ruining his very nice shoes in the muddy pond. People also gloss over this fact that Spielberg was on set. Spielberg is like the best friend of George Lucas. The two of them made movies together, and now, like, he's on the set of a new Star Wars movie? Coincidence? I think not. The Times continued. Cruise just wanted to watch, he told them. I think he's going to have a cameo in it, but Levy setting up a scene involved a lightsaber duel in the water and suggested that the star, Tom Cruise, jump on one of the cameras. He meant it as a joke, but there was Cruise wading into the muddy pond, holding the camera like a pro. Now, there's been talk since this news dropped that Tom Cruise could be playing a major role in this movie. I don't think he is. If anything, he's some sort of side alien / Easter egg type deal. I don't think he's going to be playing a big role in the movie. I honestly think that he was just visiting set. I think he's just friends with maybe Sean Levy or somebody on the set, maybe even Ryan Gosling, and he was just hanging out. And he's like, hey, come on down, come to set. You know what? Film a scene. Why not? Like, they were just having fun, and maybe he's going to be a cameo. The people saying that he's going to be like this huge role, I don't think he is. I really don't. They already got this massive loaded cast of Matt Smith, Ryan Gosling, Amy Adams, etc. So I don't think he'll be in it like in any sort of big way, but maybe some sort of cameo. Now, when you see the movie, you will know that that part was shot by Tom. So whenever we're watching, a muddy pond lightsaber duel, which just sounds so cool, you're talking about post-sequels, lightsaber on lightsaber combat sequence in a muddy pond. We don't know who it is. We don't know if they're Sith. We don't know if they're Jedi. All we know is it sounds freaking awesome, and it was filmed by Tom Cruise. He's friends with the cinematographer. True. Cinematographer Claudio Miranda was also the cinematographer for Top Gun Maverick. So that could be the case. I'm sure he's friends with a ton of people. Hollywood, they all know each other. They're all in movies together. They all work on movies together. Yeah. So my question to you is, actually, let's put up a poll. Let's put up a poll, because this poll's been up for a while. 79% of you guys, by the way, think that there will be Mortis God flashbacks in Ahsoka Season 2, and I agree. Do you think, there we go, Ryan Gosling will play, I'm not going to say a Jedi, I'll just put it this way, will wield a lightsaber in Starfighter? Yes or no? Not a Jedi, because at this point in the timeline, there aren't really any Jedi. Unless he survived Luke's Jedi Temple, which is unlikely. But do you think he will wield a lightsaber? We'll put it that way. Because who is using these lightsabers in this lightsaber fight that we were talking about here? Continuing. Sean Levy said, how cool is that? That when you watch that, you'll be like, oh my God, Tom Cruise, he directed that scene. Not much is known about Star Wars Starfighter, other than it being an original entry into the galaxy far, far away, and that it's separate from the Skywalker movies. Granted, if Amy Adams is playing Mara Jade, and Flynn Gray is playing the child of Mara Jade, likely Luke Skywalker's child, then it's going to be pretty connected to the Skywalker movies. But that's still just a rumor for now and speculation. That's not confirmed by any means. So I don't really know. Ryan Gosling headlines the tentpole opposite Matt Smith, Mia Goth, Aaron Pierre, and Amy Adams. Some pretty big names, among others. Sean Levy directs the movie with the script from Jonathan Tropper, best known for his creation of the Cinemax series such as Banshee and Warrior. Now, my thing with this whole original entry in the galaxy far, far away, sure, it's brand new characters. It's separate from the Skywalker saga. Yeah, it's 5 years after, but there's going to be connections, whether it's to stuff after, like post sequels, like the Rey movie, or connections to stuff that came before but isn't related to the Skywalker saga. For example, if Darth Talon shows up, like that could be connected to the Maul series, but not to the Skywalker saga itself, or Abeloth, or the Grisk, like stuff that already exists inside of the known timeline, but not related to the Skywalker bloodline or the Skywalker story in the 9 movies. So there's that. There's a breed of movie star and filmmaker that makes it a point of pride to spend all the money that he has. We talked about this on Thursday, but Sean Levy told him about his approach to blockbuster filmmaking. As if your creative appetite is so ferocious that it costs the cost and schedule be damned. You're going to spend all of it. And that's just not how he works. But I'm a guy that the studios call when they want someone they know will take their investment seriously and deliver responsibly. So this is honestly Sean Levy just pretty much making himself the it guy in Hollywood for any studio that wants to make a movie that's going to be really, really good, but also under budget or on budget. This is him pretty much selling himself and selling his soul to the Hollywood studios. It's not the sexiest way to put it, but I'm a good worker, and I do take pride in that. I mean, this guy's gotten a ton of work, especially as of recent, coming off the backs of Stranger Things, and Deadpool and Wolverine. You're talking about a guy who, if this was 2014, if this was pre-sequel trilogy, people would be celebrating having parades down the street that Sean Levy, or a guy of Sean Levy's caliber, is making a Star Wars movie. But because of the sequel trilogy, because of the, division in the Star Wars fandom, because of the scarring that exists in Star Wars fans' minds, there's not that excitement. Now, maybe there will be that excitement after Starfighter comes out, but people really don't put into account how lucky we are that we are getting this caliber filmmaker to make a Star Wars movie. Not even the fact that it has Ryan Gosling in it and all these other great movie stars, which some people are not a fan of. They don't want movie stars in Star Wars. But when we're talking about directors and filmmakers making Star Wars, we've been living it up lately. Jon Favreau comes over and does Star Wars shows for over 6 years, and now he's making a Star Wars movie. And now we got Sean Levy. Pretty great. I really hope that Mara Jade is a new version of Amy Adams is a new version of Mara Jade, and her son is the other Vader's grandchild that George Lucas spoke of. So Luke's child. Yes? I'm all for that. I am 100% for that. If Amy Adams is playing Mara Jade, first of all, great casting. And second of all, she's probably dead, which is kind of, a bummer. But maybe we'll get some Mara Jade in the Mandoverse, which would be fan-freaking-tastic. Here's my idea. Here's my fanboy dream. You introduce Mara Jade as Amy Adams in Starfighter in a flashback sequence. In said flashback sequence, you see her holding a baby and being like, you must go with this guy. Or go whatever. You must save yourself. Drops him in a river and he floats down the river. Whatever happens, happens. She rescues the child and dies doing it. So you watch this character, who is, again, titled Mara Jade, and you watch her die during the events of I guess, the pre-sequel era. Like right before the sequels. Then you fast forward 9 or 10 or 12 years, whatever, how old Flynn Gray's character is, 12 years, to the Starfighter movie, and that's where you kickstart off with this kid. And then you get that whole story. That will give you so much time to tell a story with Mara Jade in the Mandoverse. Because now you've already seen her death, but what leads her to that death? Whose child is that? You can tell that entire story in live action or in animation in the Mandoverse era. And you can have Amy Adams reprise the role as the character because she's the same age. If it's a flashback sequence, she's the exact same age, and now she can be in the Mando trilogy. She could be in a Mandoverse show. She could be anywhere because she is that same age. Could be. Could be. But that's just my fanboy dream. Okay. And then you have that right there. So the big news being Tom Cruise on set behind the camera, but the bigger news being he's filming a lightsaber duel. So who do we think is wielding those lightsabers? And who do you think those characters are? For example, Matt Smith. Do you think he's wielding a lightsaber? Yes or no? And if so, is he a Sith Lord? Is this lightsaber going to be the color of red? Is it Ryan Gosling? And if so, is he a Jedi? Who is he? What is he? Why is he? I'll do you one better. Where is he? Chat? What do we think? By the way, 53% of you, oh crap, that's pretty close. 53% of you do say that you think Ryan Gosling will be wielding a lightsaber. That means 47% say it's not Gosling. So if it's not Gosling, then who is it? Why is Gamora? Oh, Avengers Infinity War. What a great movie. What a great movie. I think Lucasfilm put too many TV shows out. It dilutes the brand. It dilutes the brand. People think that Star Wars is TV shows only now. Marvel already admitted that they diluted their brand with too many TV shows. Yes and no. Star Wars stopped making movies for the last 6 years. So the only place that Star Wars exists is on Disney Plus. So we've only been getting like 1 or 2 live action shows a year, and that's it. With Marvel, they were at a point where they had 3 live action movies, 3 live action shows, and maybe even an animated show too, which is a lot. My dream as a Star Wars fan would be 1 live action movie, 1 live action show, and 1 animated series a year. Just 3 projects. And then you can have the smaller stuff like the comics and the books and the Tales type stuff and the Visions type stuff. That stuff is fine. 3 major projects per year. Marvel was at like 6 or maybe even closer to 8 per year. That's a lot. That's diluting the brand. 3 per year is not that much. And that's what we're getting this year. We're getting a Mando movie, Ahsoka Season 2, the Maul Shadow Lord, and other stuff. Video games, comics, books. We're getting a Vision spinoff, hopefully a Tales series. Like, that is perfection. Perfection. Yeah. Matt Smith would have experience. True. Matt Smith is coming with experience of wielding weaponry. Not specifically a lightsaber, but weaponry. So the only problem with Matt Smith being the one wielding a lightsaber, though, is that he was only on the set in December. So that's a big key thing here. Tom Cruise was on set in November. But we know for a fact, thanks to Matt Smith himself, that he was only on set in December and only for a couple of weeks. So it couldn't have possibly been Matt Smith in this scene that Tom Cruise was filming. I just thought of that right now. So it could be Mia Goth. Mia Goth could be wielding a lightsaber. And if it is Mia Goth, then who's to say that Mia Goth is not playing a character that looks a little bit like this? Just maybe a little bit older. Yeah. Could be. She would certainly be wielding a lightsaber. That's for damn sure. I thought it was rumored that he was playing a general type. I don't recall that. Maybe you're right. I don't know. If Matt Smith is supposed to be playing some sort of general type character, then you would assume Grisk, or I would assume Grisk or Vong, because then it would be like a species, which would make for a great new villain, different than Sith, different than all the other villains that have come before. But the only problem with that is who's wielding the lightsabers. If the bad guys are the Grisk or the Vong, which would be awesome, don't get me wrong, I want that to happen. A whole species that is very advanced and strategical. It's like a whole species of Thrawns, pretty much. Them versus our future characters, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. But that doesn't account for the lightsaber duels we're talking about right now. Who's wielding the lightsabers? That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know. When are we getting the merchandise, Mike? Oh, yeah, you see my nice mug? Soon. Soon. Yeah, this will be for your purchasing if you want. Good Cups full of orders. Can I get some Good Cups full of orders in the chat, please? Bum, bum. The Grisk are the one wielding lightsabers? If they bring in the Grisk with an army of lightsaber-wielding Grisk, oh, that's my God. That would be insane. Do the Grisk have hair? It's actually a good question. Do the Grisk have hair? We've only ever seen the Grisk one time, I believe. Let me see. And it was just a very, very... Yeah. Check this out. We have descriptions of the Grisk, but this is the only image that we have from a comic. Now, that could, I guess, in fact, be... No, that looks like a face. I was going to say it could be like a helmet or something, but it looks like a face. This is really the only look we have at a Grisk. Now, granted, this could change drastically, but they don't have the nose look like Voldemort's, and it makes you think of the guy from the Star Wars Eclipse trailer. Yeah, people think that this could be a Grisk, which would be awesome, honestly. It would make Star Wars Eclipse so much better. But if this is the Grisk, doesn't really look like Matt Smith, if you ask me. Not, just a little different. Just a little different. Yeah. That would be bad. Thrawn would freak out. Well, Thrawn's not going to be around anymore. I think Thrawn's going to be way dead by that time. Jesse Plemons. I'm so glad you brought that up, RG. Jesse Plemons was reported to be getting a role as a villain in Star Wars Starfighter back in like last June or even May. Maybe even earlier than that. Whatever. Needless to say, Jesse Plemons is supposed to be getting a role in said movie. Now, for some reason, they've gone radio silence on the Jesse Plemons talk. They announced the cast of the movie. No Jesse Plemons. Still, now there's no mention of him being involved at all. So maybe that was just a rumor and it went away. That's possible. Or they're keeping his character a secret. Also possible. Only time will tell. The drawing looks like the bald guy from Galaxy Quest. Well, now I gotta look up the bald guy from Galaxy Quest. Bald guy, Galaxy Quest. Oh, yeah, this guy. Is this who you're talking about? I guess. Not really. No. I mean, no. Not really. Wait, is that Alan Rickman? Is that Severus Snape right there? Bad guy, not bald guy? Oh, you said bald. That's not my fault. You said bald. Oh, this guy. Okay. Still no, but yeah, I get what this is, I guess, a little closer. Let me see if I can get a good image of his face. Aha, yes, because this guy does not have a nose. He doesn't have a nose. Yeah. Yes. That's a little bit closer. Okay. So there's that. If this is the Grisk, that would be great, but we know that Matt Smith is probably not the one wielding the lightsaber. Maybe he is wielding a lightsaber and Tom Cruise didn't, film that scene. But it's possible that we have somebody else wielding a lightsaber. Yeah. So that brings us to, have the Sith already returned? This article is pretty good, so let's take a look at this. Coming from comicbook.com. 7 years after the Rise of Skywalker, Star Wars already bringing back the Sith. This could be a big problem. Because as we last left it with Palpatine, he was supposed to be all the Sith when he died on Exegol. The Sith have always been such a big part in Star Wars, despite the fact that they weren't actually named on screen until the prequel trilogy, which I got a lot of crap for, but whatever. Darth Vader was officially called the Dark Lord of the Sith in its final novelization for the first film. There is no mention of the Sith in the original trilogy itself on screen. George Lucas only revealed what the Sith were in the prequel trilogy, introducing concepts like the Sith rule of two and explaining why there were fewer numbers than the Jedi. So just like the dyad in the Force wasn't introduced until the sequel trilogy, the rule of two wasn't introduced until Star Wars itself was already 20 plus years old. The Star Wars sequel trilogy deliberately positions Kylo Ren as something different, something new, a dark Jedi, despite the fact that he had a Sith-styled red lightsaber, but the Sith did return by the end of the sequels, courtesy of the resurrection of Palpatine himself, who believed himself the culmination of everything the Sith stood for. Palpatine died again, and the Sith line came to an end with him. But is Star Wars already bringing the Sith back 5 years later? Which brings us back to our lightsaber duels. 2027, in the anniversary year of this first Star Wars movie, and Lucasfilm is celebrating it in style with Star Wars Starfighter, a new blockbuster movie by Sean Levy. Well, we don't know much about the plot right now. Ryan Gosling is confirmed as a star, rescuing a Force-sensitive teenager played by Flynn Gray and his mother, Amy Adams, from sinister forces led by Matt Smith and Mia Goth. But we just learned an exciting new detail, that Starfighter will feature a lightsaber duel, including part of it being shot by Tom Cruise when he visited set. It makes sense to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Star Wars with a lightsaber duel, of course, but it's also pretty significant given Starfighter is set 5 years after the events of Rise of Skywalker. Well, it's true that lightsabers have been used by other Force cults in the wider lore, Lucasfilm has always been careful not to compromise the iconic image of Jedi and Sith on the big screen. Tellingly, Dark Jedi like Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati have been given orange lightsabers on Disney+, likely in part to differentiate them from Sith to avoid compromising the iconography. A lightsaber duel in Starfighter pretty much confirms that they will be dealing with Jedi and possibly Sith. There's long been speculation that Amy Adams' character is a former Jedi, explaining a Force-sensitive child pursued by the villains. So, if Amy Adams is a Jedi, she'd have to be from Luke's Jedi Temple, not the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, or I guess not the Jedi Temple of the Republic, because she's too young for that. So she'd have to be a Luke Skywalker Jedi Temple goer. Alternatively, it's equally possible that Ryan Gosling is playing a Jedi or even former Jedi. Still, again, too young to be a Order 66 survivor. He would have to be a Jedi from Luke's Jedi Temple. And he could be associated with Rey's new Jedi Order. A lot of these characters could be. I think Starfighter is going to be very much a way to set up the Rey movie. Not just to set up her Jedi Order, but to set up the movie itself. Indeed. Okay. Whatever the truth may be, though, the big question is, what does this mean for the villains? Mia Goth right there, and of course Matt Smith. If there's a lightsaber duel, it logically stands to reason that the film's villains will have lightsabers too, because you have to have a lightsaber duel with a lightsaber versus a lightsaber, unless it's a lightsaber versus a Beskar spear, or that's about it. A lightsaber versus a lightsaber. That means, assuming Lucasfilm still aims to maintain that iconography, which is a safe bet, we'll either be dealing with a Dark Jedi or even potentially a Sith Lord. There's an important distinction between those two groups. Of course, Dark Jedi are Jedi who have fallen, for example, Kylo Ren, Ben Solo, and who still justify what they are doing, usually because it serves the greater good. Sith are fully bought-in members to the Sith cult, devoted to the power and self-actualization through dominance. For example, Palpatine or Lord Vader. The idea of a Dark Jedi sits uncomfortably with a part of the sits uncomfortably with this part of the Star Wars timeline. Through Supreme Leader Snoke, Palpatine sought to dominate the entire galaxy through the First Order. He had Luke Skywalker's Jedi slaughtered rather than corrupted, with Kylo Ren the sole survivor that we know of. The little information that we have of Luke Skywalker's Jedi Temple means that there could be survivors of that event. Just like there's survivors of Order 66, there could be some people who weren't at the Jedi Temple at the time. They were off-world or doing something else and somehow survived. It's very possible. Any other Dark Jedi from Luke's Order would confuse the timeline, fit awkwardly with continuity, and undermine Luke's legacy. Meanwhile, Rey had only 5 years to train new Jedi at this point, so she, probably doesn't have many. And there hasn't really been enough time for things to go badly wrong. So in the 5 years that Rey has had to start her new Jedi Temple, it's highly unlikely that she has failed miserably, and there's already some dark Jedi out there roaming around thanks to Rey. But would things be any better if Star Wars revealed Matt Smith or Mia Goth were in fact a Sith? There's long been confusion about why the Sith were so dangerous. They caused an imbalance in the why the Sith were so dangerous. They caused an imbalance in the Force, leading to the birth of the Chosen One. The likely reason lies with Darth Bane's reinvention of the Sith 1,000 years before the Skywalker saga, when he established a rule of two. According to this, there are only ever 2 Sith at a time, a master and apprentice, one who craves power and the other who to wield it. So the apprentice always trying to overthrow said master. The rule of two meant that every Sith was more powerful than the last, taking over the power from the last, which is arguably the reason that the Force lost any sense of balance. It means it was quite possible that Star Wars could bring back this. It is quite possible they could bring back the Sith, but simply avoid problems with the Chosen One prophecy by ensuring these Sith did not follow the line of Darth Bane. Meaning, there could be some sort of Sith cult out there where there's multiple Sith around. This could be somebody who doesn't listen to the rule of two. Or it could be somebody who listens to the rule of two that just doesn't think Palpatine is still alive and wants to start the rule of two over again. There's many different ways to go about this, but the Sith returning might not be the best option here. It's hard to envision a scenario where there is a Sith resurgence. Giving Palpatine's example means that the Sith are associated with power and dominance, while there is surely countless old Sith holocrons that could be found by power-hungry individuals. It happens a lot in comics and in books where people just stumble upon a Sith artifact and maybe they get corrupted by it or whatever it may be. For example, the Shadow of the Sith book, or even like the Darth Maul's mask with Vader's comics. There's plenty of instances where that happens, but this is a different scenario entirely, where these are two people, possibly Matt Smith and Mia Goth's characters, who are trained in the ways of the dark side of the Force. And that's not something that's happened that we know of in the timeline recently. So what this return of Sith would mean for Star Wars. This is only a theory for now, of course. It's entirely possible that Lucasfilm will go down the Dark Jedi route. Or this is a flashback to a lightsaber duel, or it could be a many number of things. Doesn't necessarily mean that we are getting Matt Smith as Sith Lord. But Star Wars would be smart to bring back a sort of pre-Bane version of the Sith, meaning no rule of two. Not least because it would raise such exciting possibilities for Rey's inevitable Jedi Order, and you could have an army of Jedi versus an army of Sith. It would mean that this so-called new Jedi Order era would become characterized by sweeping battles between the Sith and the Jedi, which is something that people have wanted to see forever. Since KOTOR, or since the Old Republic era was conceived as an idea, that there was this era where the rule of two didn't exist, where there was this time where there was hundreds of Jedi versus hundreds of Sith in these epic battles, people have wanted to see that on screen. And doing that in a post-sequel world would get people so hyped up. So hyped up. The kind of stories that viewers have longed to see for decades. Individually, these Sith would be mere shadows of what Palpatine and Vader were. But it would ensure the greatest Sith in history remains distinctive. Sorry, easy for me to say. It would allow you to not take away from Palpatine's power, not take away from the greatness of those Sith, of Vader, of Maul, of everybody that came before, Plagueis, Tenebrous, Bane, because these Sith would not be as powerful as those beings. Because the dark side of the Force is stretched thin between multiple beings, and as it mentions before, the rule of two is at least put in place, to the idea being that each Sith Lord becomes more powerful as the generations go on. So these Sith, whether there's 10 or 100 of them, would not be nearly as powerful as Palpatine or Vader. So it would keep the greatness of those characters intact while giving us great battles of Sith versus Jedi post sequels. Okay, continuing. We don't yet know whether the lightsaber duel filmed by Tom Cruise features Matt Smith or Mia Goth. I think it won't feature Matt Smith because he wasn't on set yet, but Mia Goth could definitely. Or perhaps some other characters whose existence is yet to be revealed. That said, there's been speculation that horror star Mia Goth would make a fantastic Darth Maul style Sith ever since she was cast as a villain, or maybe even if we're really lucky, maybe Maybe Darth Maul's apprentice. Maybe, Darth Talon. Just maybe. Okay. So we can only hope that speculation proves to be true, that Goth is indeed a Sith scrapper, and we are entering a bold new era for Star Wars. And then there's Darth Maul himself. So, what do we think? Are we getting Mia Goth and Matt Smith as Sith Lords? Or is this lightsaber duel a flashback? Or is this lightsaber duel something else? Let's actually pull this up. Let's pull it up. By the way, that last poll was, 50-50? Hang on. No. Why is it not loading? Why is it not loading? Oh, there it is. 50-50 right down the middle with 50 votes. Do you think Ryan Gosling will wield the lightsaber? 50% of you say yes, 50% of you say no. That's crazy. All right, let's pull this up. Do you think Matt Smith and Mia, oh my God, I can't type, Mia Goth will play Sith in Starfighter? Yes or no? Yes or no? What do you think? John says, will there still be a Rey movie? It was announced 3 years ago, and nothing. It was under Kathleen Kennedy. Will Filoni still make it? Yes. The Rey movie is definitely going to get made because of this Starfighter movie. There's a setup for with lightsabers and Force users and this kid being Force sensitive for a Jedi Order, for a safe haven for this kid who's being hunted down by these evil pursuers. So that safe haven, that end goal, is Rey's new Jedi Order. That's it. And with the sequels ending the way that they did, she has to start a new Jedi Order. She's got the sacred texts. That's how it's going to go. And if we're lucky, we get Finn in that Jedi Order as well. Yeah. But as you brought that up, and it's a great transition here, the transition between Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni. So the latest and greatest, let me pull this up. The latest and greatest in terms of Kathleen Kennedy stepping down, it says, pull this up, that this could be happening as soon as next week. This time next week, a week from today, we could be talking about brand new presidents, co-presidents of Lucasfilm. I've been seeing a lot of videos online about how great this is, about how horrible Kathleen Kennedy is and all that. It's almost as if she is the scapegoat. Now, granted, she is the president of Lucasfilm, so everything good and bad that happens under her watch is her fault. However, she never, ever gets the credit for the good. Whenever it's bad, it's Kathleen Kennedy's fault. She's the worst. She's the worst. She's the worst. She's the worst. Whenever it's good, it's somebody else. It's Tony Gilroy. It's Dave and John. It's anybody except for Kathleen Kennedy. Let's not forget that she's been in charge of the company for the last 13 years. Since we've gotten Rebels, since we've gotten The Force Awakens, Rogue One, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, Clone Wars Season 7, The Bad Batch, Tales, everything good that we've received over the last 13 years has been thanks to Kathleen Kennedy. Granted, has she gotten everything right? No. Rian Johnson with the sequel trilogy, the whole divisiveness of all that? No. But she never gets the credit. So, as people are celebrating the retirement of Kathleen Kennedy, they should be celebrating the accomplishments that she did when she was in charge of Star Wars. They almost forget that George personally picked her to be the heiress, to be the heir to the empire, to be the heir to the throne of Lucasfilm. George did that because he saw Kathleen Kennedy as the next person. But I digress. All that to say, she is on her way out. She is leaving could be as early as next week. Now, I say take this with a giant grain of salt because we've been talking about Kathleen Kennedy leaving Lucasfilm for years, like years and years and years. And up until this point, because it's still 2026 and she hasn't left yet, up until this point, it hasn't happened. So those years and years and years of speculation have not come true. At least, not yet. So take it with a giant grain of salt because it is just a rumor for now. But she has not left yet. But it could be this week. And here's the latest and greatest from this report, which is kind of crazy. Is the goal of the new president of Dave Filoni to produce a new Star Wars trilogy? Insider reporter Rob Snyder predicts that as a result of the tightened development plan within the company, there will be a significant freedom and effort that will be focused on a new trilogy that Kathleen Kennedy envisioned. Additionally, current Lucasfilm production head Carrie Beck may be further promoted after this whole thing happens. So once Dave Filoni and Miss Brennan become the co-presidents, there's a rumor that there's going to be the new trilogy that will be the focus that Kathleen Kennedy envisioned. Now, what do you think this trilogy might be? I got two options. You put The Force Awakens on the good side? Yeah, I love The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens is a great setup. Is it very similar to A New Hope? Yeah. You got the character coming from the desert, the sort of Death Star looking thing where the main one of the main characters destroys it in a flying object. You got a cool lightsaber duel. Is it like, all those things? Did I just describe The Phantom Menace, A New Hope, and The Force Awakens all at the same time? Yes. Are all three of those movies fantastic? Yes. The Force Awakens sets up these characters so well. Rey, the Finn being a stormtrooper turned Jedi, or at least was set up to be a Jedi. Poe being the best starfighter pilot in the galaxy. Luke vanished. It's all Snoke in the First Order. It's all just the, I guess, explanation after the fact that not a lot of people are the happiest about. Yeah. What is the bad for you then, Mike? I'm not the biggest fan of the next two movies. Can I watch them and enjoy them? Yes. Are the holes or problems that I have with them being fixed over time? Yes. For example, the Knights of Ren. The Knights of Ren are such a cool concept. Kylo Ren is the leader of the Knights of Ren, and they are barely in the trilogy. But now the explanation of where they are, thanks to the comics that just came out a couple months ago, that helps. The Shadow of the Sith book, which explains the dagger and Ochi of Bastoon's backstory and all that helps. The Project Necromancer stuff in the Bad Batch and in The Mandalorian, that helps. So over time, these movies have gotten better for me. The big deals that I still need, I guess, more explored. I need a Clone Wars style animated series for Luke's Jedi Temple. I need to see what down to the T put him on Ahch-To. I need more than just a bad dream. So that's my problem. But other than that, in the Disney era, I'm not a big Visions fan, as you guys know. But it's not like I actively hate on Visions. I just don't. It's not my thing. I don't like it. So I'm not a big Visions fan. I still haven't watched like not Tales. Young Jedi Adventures. I'm not a big fan of Resistance. I mean, it is what it is, but it's not like great. But yeah, I mean, the Disney era, so-called trash Star Wars, is some of my favorite Star Wars ever. It's Star Wars Rebels. It's Clone Wars Season 7. It's The Mandalorian. It's Ahsoka. It's Andor. It's just peak on peak on peak. So, yeah. But where were we? Oh, new trilogy. So here are my two options for the new trilogy. I think we're talking a post-sequel trilogy that will be set up by Starfighter. Starfighter might even be the first movie in the trilogy, or it's a Rey trilogy after that, or it's a Mando trilogy. Because Kathleen Kennedy and Dave Filoni and Disney, and Lucasfilm have been on board for a Mando trilogy. Disney is the one who has said no. They need to see a success in the box office first before they go and greenlight a trilogy, which makes sense from a business perspective. But Lucasfilm wants the trilogy. So that might be the trilogy that they're talking about here. Also greenlit under the Kathleen Kennedy regime was the Rey movie in the post-sequel content of Starfighter. So there might be a trilogy there as well. But tell me what you think in the chat. Tell me what you think. What do you think this trilogy is talking about? The Knights of Ren were only in the sequels for like 4 minutes. Yeah, I know. Huge missed opportunity. Same with Finn's character. Finn was set up to be a stormtrooper who turns, which is just so badass, turns to a Jedi. That would be awesome. And it didn't happen. Does Rey deserve another trilogy? Luke only got one trilogy. Well, when I say a Rey trilogy, it's like me calling it a Mando trilogy. I think Din Djarin will die in the first movie of the trilogy. It just takes place in that time period. So I'm only calling it a Rey trilogy. It would be a post-sequel trilogy. I think Rey would be the Obi-Wan of that trilogy. Maybe she'd die in the first movie. Maybe she doesn't die at all, but she won't be a main character or the main character. Because Obi-Wan is, I guess, a main character in A New Hope, but he's not the main character. The Simon Kinberg trilogy. That's also possibly it as well. But Simon Kinberg, we really don't know when his trilogy takes place. We don't know much of anything about his trilogy. All we know is he's the same guy who gave us Star Wars Rebels, and that's like, my favorite show of all time. So Luke got 3 trilogies at the end of Revenge of the Sith. I think whoever said that, John? No, who said that? Oh, Iodine. I think they meant that like he's only the main character of one trilogy. Yeah. Yeah. Colin Trevorrow's Duel of the Fates would have tied it all together. Would it have, though? Would it have? Because Finn's not a Jedi in that movie either. The Coruscant stuff would have been cool. I will grant you that. The Coruscant stuff would have been awesome. I did like the staff lightsaber for Rey, but I love the yellow lightsaber for Rey. Yeah. Then why call it a Rey trilogy? You don't call it an Obi-Wan trilogy or a Qui-Gon trilogy. Well, because there's a name for that. It's the prequel trilogy. I'd have to call it the sequel trilogy or the post-sequel trilogy. It's just easier to call it the Rey trilogy because when I say Rey trilogy, you all know what time period I'm talking about. When I say Mando trilogy, you know what I'm talking about. If I said a pre-sequel, post-original trilogy, then you guys would be like, what the hell is Mike talking about? Yeah. If Rey's the only in one movie, then why make a trilogy? Okay. That would be like saying, we made the originals, and now Luke is only going to be in one of the sequels. Why make the trilogy at all? There's going to be new characters. There's going to be new main characters. We just don't know who they are yet. We haven't been introduced to them yet. Maybe Flynn Gray's character from this Starfighter movie will be one of those main characters. That is possible. Indeed. But all that to say, Kathleen Kennedy could be out by the end of next week. By the end of next week. And Dave Filoni and Miss Brennan could be our new presidents of Lucasfilm, which is quite wild. We have had, it's only the 10th of the year. It's January 10th, 2026. And we have just been living it up as Star Wars fans over here, from leaks for Ahsoka Season 2 to Tom Cruise filming lightsaber duels on Starfighter to Kathleen Kennedy likely, again, take it with a giant grain of salt, but likely leaving Lucasfilm as president after 13 years, and Dave Filoni, the man, the myth, the legend himself, taking over as co-president. It's a wild time. It really is a wild time to be a Star Wars fan, but it's a great time to be a Star Wars fan. 2026 might go down as the greatest year ever. Just in general, not just Star Wars wise, but you look at the content in other places, like The Boys Season 5 comes to an end, Invincible Season 4, Avengers Doomsday, Dune 3, Spider-Man. I'm sure I'm missing a ton of great stuff, but you know what I mean. 2026 is going to be insane, so we're off to a great start so far. But until then, smash a freaking like on this stream if you have not already. Hit that subscribe and hit that bell so you get notified every time I post a video. This is the first time we've gone over 2 hours in a long time. This is the first 2-hour long stream in a while. But until next time, hope you have a great rest of your evening, great rest of your lives, and good night. Oh, wait, sorry. That's not how I end the streams. Smash a freaking like on this stream, and yeah. Go join the Discord if you are not yet already in that Discord. Go join that. It's completely free. Just keep the conversation going. You know, this is where we get a lot of our news anyway, from that Discord. So may the Force be with you always. Oh, yeah. What a great stream. What a great show. You guys are the absolute best. I appreciate you all so much more than you'll ever know. This was a crazy one. I did not expect to be getting the concept art from the Clone Wars connecting to Ahsoka Season 2. Like, it's really, 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 really cool stuff. It's exciting. It's very exciting. But until next time, hope you have a great rest of your evening, great rest of your lives. And good night, everybody. Oh, wait, let me end this poll. Hang on. Wait. I didn't end this poll. Oh, my God, another poll, 50-50? Wait. I'm ending the poll. 50-50 again. Do you think Mia Goth and Matt Smith will be playing Sith Lords? So somebody's got to be wielding the lightsaber. 50% of you guys say yes, that you think that they'll be Sith Lords. 50% of you say no. 50% of you also said yes and no to Ryan Gosling being wielding a lightsaber. Somebody's got to be wielding the lightsaber. But good night, everybody.